Billy Magnussen stars in HBO Max's genre-bending comedy, sci-fi drama Made for Love. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. Billy, it's so cool to have you here with us today. Made for Love is such a complex show, as is your character Byron. I'm wondering, what were your first impressions of the show when you read those scripts for the first time? And was there any part of Byron that jumped off the page that you could empathize with when you were just starting to grapple with the character?
Yes, that's a complicated question, but let's do it. Let's do it. I think that is the best part about the show, and especially Byron, is the complexity of a relationship. Even though we used sci-fi and comedy and technology, that's the smoke screen to really talk about the depths and the profoundness of emotions and feelings and being vulnerable in a relationship. And I think that was the brilliant move that Alyssa Nutting and her novel and Christina Lee did with the show. With the character of Byron, what jumped out more than anything, I think there's a lot of people that could have created a almost one note kind of character with it and be an evil sociopathic tech billionaire. And it could have been one note and went through it. But through the process, we had the fortunate opportunity to have a global pandemic during our shooting. So we had a second to pause. And Alyssa and Christina gave me the opportunity. They brought me into really creating the depth of this character. And the joy of playing Byron was to create that egomaniacal, toxic man and just have that stereotype and then just poke friggin' holes all through it. And ironically, like while playing this character, I started questioning myself as a man and like that prescription that we're all prescribed as young men of what we need to do, the checklist of things. So the joy of playing this was to build up such an identity and then realize that he's just a scared boy like everyone else, and putting that vulnerability out there was the caviar, the beautiful ecstasy of playing that character, because it's scary, man. I don't know about you and how emotionally in touch you are, but there's parts of Byron and myself that I hide, and I had to go digging in there and like just cultivate and excavate those characters' qualities. And it's scary. It's scary to do it sometimes when you examine human nature like that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you more about that because, so Byron's this kind of visionary tech mogul, but his innovations are so rooted, I think, in his pain and insecurity and fear. And you talked a little bit about this, but what was it like to really like dig deep to find the nuance and complexity of a role that, like you said, could have been so one note and kind of sinister? And also, how helpful was it to have Alyssa's novel, but also have Alyssa so involved in the process of making the show because she helped Christina write the scripts and she was like on set?
Yeah. There's a wonderful, like weirdly, I hope I'm using the word fortuitous correctly, moment when you realize this, again, having a female perspective of the ideal man and playing that and having that little like knowledge, and Alyssa Nutting, like who created the novel, really put it out there. The prescription that she even was brought up to believe and understand about a man, and to play it from that point of view was really exciting, to have the conversation and be like, actually, I know you're putting this out there, but my internal struggles and understanding and own depths of this character are from a different perspective, weirdly. So having that conversation and that dialogue only makes it more deep and more, able to connect with audience members. It's so funny, like the more specific an artist is, the more universal it becomes. And that's the irony of it all. It's like the more individual and the more specific, it becomes more universal and you connect to it because you're like, how did that person know that thought that I've only had? How do they connect to it? The first part of the question, I forget. You talked about Allison Nutting. Like, love with her. She's fantastic. Christina Lee, again, like, you don't get projects like this where, you know, I was able to be a part of creating this world and this character and this crazy identity of what Made for Love is.
Yeah.
So the first part of the question, one more time.
I think you covered it. I was just talking about like that the roots of the character are really in his pain and fear. So what was it like trying to find that, find the nuance of a character that is really, I mean, he does some sinister stuff.
Yeah. So going on this deep emotional journey with this character, and again, poking holes in the idea of masculinity and like what it all is, you confront a lot of demons. And while doing that, you still have to make it funny. And I think the challenge of this project, which really excites me, is that the more authentic and honest you can be, the more funny or humorous you can find in it. Because that, you know, always play a comedy like a drama. Never play the joke, never wink at it. So yeah, that pain, ironically, is funny when you make it real. I do think Byron was growing up in a world where there was many traumas with him growing up. I think he pushed the world away from him and created a fort around him to protect himself, which I don't know about you. I know a lot of people, men and women, that do that. And that's the honesty of it. And through that honesty, the humor comes out of it. So it's a lot. It was a lot of just being like, honestly, what are you feeling? Honestly, confronting yourself over and over and over again. And it's not like, oh, one-time thing. You got to be like, where's the actual root of this thing? Yeah, I hide it under this, but what's under that even? So yeah, again, it's weirdly helpful to have a global pandemic at the beginning of shooting where you could you never get that opportunity with projects. A lot of times it's like show up, or especially with TV, like show up, do the job, and you have to do all that work swiftly. This was, really building a life, I felt.
Yeah, you had a lot of time to do it sounds like. And also, I mean, the ensemble is so terrific. Can you talk a bit about working with Cristin Milioti, who plays Hazel, Byron's wife, also Ray Romano, who plays Hazel's father, and working with Stephanie Lang, who I spoke to her a few days ago, and she said she really wanted you guys to kind of not lean into the humor, like you were saying. Don't play the joke, play it as straight as possible, and let those moments kind of come to the surface, like with Byron and Caleb Foote. Those moments are really genuinely hysterical. What was it like just trying to navigate that with Stephanie, but also with like a totally phenomenal ensemble?
I will start off with Cristin Milioti. I've known Cristin for a decade now, and we have a language between us that we've built and a relationship we built, and we are, honestly, it's to have a partner working like that with her is a gift, because you don't always get those opportunities, and that woman is so talented. We're both theater trained, so we have a good dialogue between us about how to go into a scene and how to develop a story and an arc. And I think of like the diner scene at the end. I don't know if you've watched this whole series. That diner scene, like that, playing a scene like that with such a talented actor across from you, you get to get nuanced and play the game, and there's a comfortability, whatever, I'm probably not using the right word, with someone like that. So you can keep diving deeper and deeper and make mistakes and not feel ashamed or broken, actually, going through it. You're creating a piece of art. I mean, again, Ray Romano, Caleb Foote, Stephanie Lang, we are in a communicative art form. No one person makes this piece of work. And to have people like that around you where they're willing to jump in and say, no, we could do this better. There's something more specific here. That is the greatest place to operate from, where the project and the idea is the most important part. I have true admiration for everyone that has worked on that, all the way to the crafty people. Everyone showed up and was just out of the park with each day. It was really a beautiful community, and the focus of us, the whole thing was the project and not anyone individually. I working next to Ray Romano, I look at that man and I'm like, God, that's a true gentleman right there. And he has a immense profoundness, professionally and personally. And, I admire him with such grace. Again, that to be surrounded by a group of people that are so ready to dive in is rare. So we were, very lucky to have this kind of ensemble.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned the diner scene, because it's the first time Byron is so vulnerable, but it's also, it's twisted, but it's moving. It's such a great scene. I also wanted to ask you about a lot of the flashback scenes throughout the entire season, especially seeing Byron meet Hazel for the first time, because it does seem like in that moment, there's something genuine about their connection and their kind of kinship there, even though very quickly it turns into something much different. But what was it like to play those early scenes, meeting Hazel? Like you said, Cristin for so long, you have so much to draw on. And what do you think Byron sees in Hazel right from the jump that makes him so kind of attached to her?
I want to go back to the idea of what this character's journey is and who Byron is and what the challenge was to build it. The point was to make the ideal prescribed man. What is a prescribed man? And he is checking off boxes, and I have the wife, I have the house, I have the successful business, I have the money. That is what we were trying to build. And then we have to break him down. And I don't know, I think there is a genuine, the challenge with Byron was to find that love that actually is hidden under all that shit. And he sees it, but he wants to tap into it. And it might have been the first flare of like, oh, I actually might love someone. I do think he loves her, but he doesn't love himself, and he can't actually be vulnerable and open and give back what's in him. And I think he sucked every ounce of emotion out of Hazel and used it for himself because he thought that's what love was. Which I don't fault Byron for being that way. That's kind of like what the world prescribed to him. I keep using this word prescribed because I think, he is a product of his environment. I think he does want love, and I think he does, genuinely admire her and wish he could be as free. And like, there's a later point in the season where Bangles even tells Hazel, like, that's not the girl I knew. You would have told that guy to fuck off easily, and I think that's the exciting part about a relationship. You can get lost in it. You can fall in love, and then it's a crazy roller coaster ride where, ironically, you can fall in love and like start losing yourself and play some fake character that's not you. So there's all these spaces of people trying to be themselves, but they're not, and trying to find a connection, but not being able to be authentically themselves to actually connect with someone. But I do think that there is a sweet moment when they first meet, and I do think it's genuine admiration and hope for love, because we all have that.
Yeah, and there is kind of a restart for Byron and Hazel at the end of the season, even though it's not kind of organically, Byron manipulates Hazel into coming back. But do you think it's possible for Byron to actually change? Like, Hazel's actually confronted him now with a lot of her problems and a lot of his flaws. do you think he's capable of changing and becoming better for Hazel in, you know, this kind of new iteration of their relationship in the hub?
I'll pose a question, because that's what entertainment's about, and like changing and playing the opposite. Do you think he was honest at the diner?
No.
Now, what's that story? Is he there? We don't know yet, but that's the exciting point, is like, can he be that? I think the fun part would be to swing the scale completely the other way. And then ironically, society, again, I'm noticing as I've been going deeper into this, someone who can be vulnerable and so emotionally there, and so, you know, I just emotionally there, then becomes weak in the eyes of the opposite sex, and they lose their power. And it's socially like put out there that, you know, like a man still needs to be a man. They ironically need to die on the horse and not get off of it. I'm not saying it's changing, and I hope it is. I think through these conversations, you know, we could do that. But I think it's fun to poke holes in all these ideologies we have about masculinity and toxic masculinity. And like, I do think Byron is that personification of what it is to be a toxic man, but is it his fault? Is it anyone's fault? I don't know. I you know, it's kind of on all of us. And I think that is the exciting part about the show. It's a commentary on it. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an odd question, but I've noticed you've played a lot of princes on screen, like in Into the Woods, in Aladdin. I mean, there's other things too, but what's so interesting about this role is this series is such like an anti-fairy tale. So I'm just wondering, what was it like for you to like subvert, like you're saying, you're poking holes in these tropes, but what was it like to subvert some of the roles that you've even done yourself in your career?
Ironically, is Byron not a prince as well? And it's after the happily ever after is what our show is. I think subverting characters, I like this as a performer and an artist, is like, play the opposite. Play actually what's deep and under it all, because that's where we all live. And it goes back to, I said at the beginning of our conversation, like, the more specific you can be as an artist, the more universal it is. And ironically, Prince Charming on the outside is fantastic, but what's really going on in there? Because that's the fun stuff, you know? And I think there are a lot of performers out there that writers and performers put things that are just on the page. And I'm just not that kind of artist. I'm just not. Because I think, you know, we all have a beautiful plethora of just magic in us, you know, and emotions and feelings and I don't know, life. And what's even more exciting is I think I'm only scratching the surface of Byron. And I feel I'm deep, and I'm like, oh, it's down there. So like, I'm excited to keep growing it and seeing where this rabbit hole goes a little with it all.
Yeah, me too. And I can't wait to see it. Billy, congratulations again on the first season of HBO Max's Made for Love. And thanks so much for chatting with Gold Derby today.